G'day and welcome back to Improving Your League. Today's guide is an example of the main methods I use to keep from autopiloting. If you've watched any of my in-game commentary, you would hear me talking a lot about the game plan for the current match I'm playing. And today I'm going to walk you through how to construct a plan, set out achievable goals, and show you a real example of how a game plan can help us win. First, let's clarify autopiloting in regards to League of Legends. It's as simple as acting without thinking of the results. This could mean going for a CS in lane that you shouldn't be going for as you're low HP and the enemy has their cooldown, or even doing something as silly as standing outside of the dragon pit you know is watered with enemies inside that could easily jump the wall. I believe we've all had these moments in games where we've ended up throwing a team fight or even the game because of autopilot. So today's goal is to help you minimise autopiloting in games. There are two main solutions I've found to help combating autopilot. Have a game plan and goals for that match, and talking to yourself out loud, explaining every action you take and how it helps you achieve the goals you've set out. Let's start with the game plan. I find it best to work these out during the loading screen. We need to figure out two sections of our plan. How do we go about getting the best result in the early game, and what is our win condition as a team? Figuring out the early game plan will give you easy goals to work towards. It doesn't have to be a complicated plan, it can be something as simple as figuring out the way to combat your direct opponent. An example of this could be you're playing Darius top, and your plan is to let your opponent push in so you can run them down with Ghost and then use your advantage to establish a freeze. Or you could be playing Veigar mid, and your goal is to survive early versus LeBlanc, playing safely back, picking up just as much CS and stacks as possible. Next, I want to work out how to win as a team. For example, is it the Malphite Orianna Yasuo wombo combo in this game? Is it protecting Kog'Maw while he shreds the enemy? Or is it sieging the enemy turret with your team's long range poke? Let's take a look at a practical example. In this game I'm playing Maokai jungle for the red team. First, as mentioned before, we want to work out the early to mid game plan. The Kindred versus Maokai matchup is very bad from my perspective. Kindred beats me at pretty much every level, so if I were playing Kindred I would invade the weaker jungler as often as I deem safe. Knowing this, my best bet is to stay away from her as best as possible. Track every wolf mark in the jungle and either go about stealing those marks or getting my team to collapse when Kindred attempts to take them. Also, as a Maokai, counter ganking in a 2v2 or a 3v3 usually works in my favour, so I want to track any of Lamb's marks as well. I can't beat her as a Maokai, but I can slow Kindred down, and that is really what I want to work around. I also want to play around mid and top, as either of them could snowball our game if they get a good lead. So to sum up our early game goals, slow Kindred's mark collection, never face her directly in a 1v1 fight, and try to play around top and mid and get them ahead if possible. Next we need to work out our team's win condition and the mid to late game plan. As a team we excel at catching and bursting out any straggling enemies, so we want to be working around that if possible. We also want to hold our ultimate for both the Rakan and Sion engage, as they can initiate from a very long distance and we can use our ultimate to separate them from their team. Finally, in a more standard team fight, we want to be playing a bit more around Akali and Gangplank. They have decent range, but some of their abilities are quite short, so we want to give them as much room as possible to fight. To sum up our late game goals, we want mobility to catch any out of position enemies and burst them down with the help of our allies. We need to hold our ultimate to separate the enemy team if they decide to use their long range initiation against us. And we need to focus on giving Akali and Gangplank as much freedom as possible in these fights. Now you want to record these goals somewhere that is visible. A small notebook on your desk, a second monitor, anything really that you can see while in game that's not overly distracting. Remember, these goals are the guidelines to help you prevent autopiloting. There is no harm in changing these goals or the overall plan as the game continues. You can be flexible as long as you make sure you replace one plan or goal with another. Now we have a plan, why should I bother to talk out aloud and explain this to myself? As mentioned before, autopiloting is acting without thinking. The process of talking to ourselves every 10 to 15 seconds, explaining what we're doing and why can break the autopilot mentality. It's hard to do at first, but just the process of explaining what you're doing and why is a huge start to reducing autopiloting. I personally have caught myself many times in the process or about to be in the process of doing something very silly, all because I couldn't explain what I was doing to myself without the phrase, "It's really risky," or "This is quite stupid." If you're unsure what to talk about, the easiest method I've found is to pretend you have a friend sitting next to you who has never seen League of Legends played before. Explain to them in as much detail as possible what you're doing and why. Keep referencing back to the goals you made before, and explain to them how you're actively working towards achieving them. Now, let's head to our example game and see how this all comes together. We assume based on scouting that Kindred wants to start red. I decided to start blue as I know Kindred would look to early invade. After my blue, I moved to the opposite side of the map away from Kindred, hoping to secure the 50-50 mark on Scuttle, which I am lucky enough to pick up. At the same time, we can indeed see that Kindred is moving into my jungle and trying to take camps away from me. The simple act of having a plan, not autopiloting and following it to the letter has put us in a great position when we're able to help mid and top. We're staying away from the 1v1 fight from Kindred, and we're taking as many marks off her as possible. This was all the plan from the start. Throughout the game, I'm making sure to track in chat the timing for Wolf's next mark. A quick wiki check in the pre-game showed us it comes up 40 seconds after the death of the last marked camp. I'm also actively making sure to track Lamb's current target to hunt, and I'm referring back to my plan. I'm even building around the idea of needing late game mobility with the purchase of mobility boots and righteous glory, so that I can be as active on the map now and I can still work towards our late game goals. Let's now fast forward to the 17-minute mark, where there is a quick scoreboard check to show us the effects of our plan coming to fruition, mainly in our top lane and our mid lane doing well, and they've begun snowballing. Moving on to Kindred, we can see she's only collected 1 mark during the entire game so far. You can tell she is frustrated with how on the ball we've been with denying marks, as in the end she ends up flashing into 2 of us just to secure a second mark, costing her life in the process. This was all made possible by the plan we made at the start of the game, and us actively talking to ourselves and reassuring ourselves of our goals and what we need to be doing in-game. One final fast forward to the setup before the final fight 11 minutes later. A slightly messy team fight breaks out 3v5. In the end, Akali just wanders over and pops 4 players because she's so far ahead, with a little assistance from Misfortune. Shifting our view once more to Kindred, before she died, we're able to see that she ends the game with only 3 marks, not even enough to get her first range upgrade. Finally, let's do a recap of the main points presented in this video. Make yourself an early, late, and teamfight game plan. Explain what you're doing to an imaginary friend. Make sure you explain how you're working towards the goals you set out. Make sure to adjust your plan as needed. Make sure you always have an active plan that you can work towards so you don't fall back into autopiloting. Finally, let me just say thank you very much for sticking to the end. If you want any more practical examples, I do in-game commentary videos every week on this channel. Feel free to leave me any likes, comments down the bottom. It all really helps the channel, guys. And if you really enjoyed the content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much. I'll catch you next time on Improving Your League, and I hope you have a wonderful day.